So all of this is sensory input. Now the trigeminal nerve has another component to it. Here's the motor root. And it piggybacks and it gets inside the conduit of the third division. It goes on down into all these muscles of mastication and the muscle that raises your soft palate, tensor veli palatini, and the muscle that braces your eardrum, tensor tympani. When you go to Ted Nugent concerts, pretty soon you can take the cotton rolls out because your tensor tympani is so tight. It's not as loud and irritating at the end of the concert as it was at the beginning, but your ear rings for another 2 days. So let's take a look at the motor root for a bit. When you see these diagrams of the trigeminal nerve, I always look at it now that information is always going this way, but it looks like the nerves go out, you know, that goes out to innervate things. It goes, no, it's coming in. These are all inputs, big inputs. And here's the semilunar ganglion, which means all these nerve fibers, their nerve cell bodies are right there. They come in there and hang out and they go off the other side. They all go up and they meet at the central nucleus and they deliver their information now. And they also deliver their information in the cervical ganglion of the trigeminal. I think I'm saying it wrong. Spinal tract. Anyway. If you were on the Fantastic Voyage, and then you go down and you're floating around and you're inside the brain and you go, whoa, I think we're at the trigeminal. And look right there, there's a semilunar ganglion. This is the coolest thing. There's an extra component to it. Here is the motor nucleus of the trigeminal and the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal. And if you're sitting there and you're watching it and all of a sudden these cables start lighting and you start staring at it, you go, what's happening? A 10-year-old could tell you what's happening based on his own experience. What must be happening right now? I now know what's happening by looking at that, and everybody else in this room knows also. This guy can tell you how he knows what's going on with that train. It all has to do with batteries and wires and motors. How fast, how does this guy make his engine go faster? He turns the rheostat and gives more electricity to the motor. Do we need to turn these lights down for this image? Can you still see it? He's going to turn the electricity up. He's going to add more electricity so the motor spins faster. It's just more. It's just the rheostat, just more. What if he goes zzz and adds more electricity and nothing happens? What does he do? He looks at where the wheels touch the track. He needs the circuit to be completed because he's adding the electricity from this battery generator, goes through the wires, which is really the track, and the track touches the engine and the engine spins. If it doesn't go and he's cranking it, oh, the train's off the track. He'll put it back on. So that's how he knows. How does he know if it's going forwards or backwards? Well, you can tell where he's looking, but there's a forward and backward on there. Everything we can tell from this picture, you can look right there and know what's happening with that engine. What happens if he gooses it and puts too much electricity at the wrong time? It goes right off the track, it crashes. There's a time and place for amount of more or less circuitry, more voltage, more electricity to the engine. There's a time where you should do it. There's a time you need to back off. If you do it too much at the wrong time, when it crashes. Here's a muscle, a bunch of individual fibers. Each fiber gets its own neuron. Each one of those goes back and becomes part of another neuron. So one neuron feeds 900 fibers in a temporalis, for example. So the more individual fibers that are contracting, the more overall force that the muscle can pull with more force. A single fiber doesn't pull harder or less intensely given how much electricity it gets. It either shortens or it does not. It's all or nothing. So the number of fibers that you innervate dictates the amount of strength of pull of that muscle. The more fibers you innervate. So when one motor neuron recruits multiple muscle fibers, multiple neuron activity will elicit a higher EMG. So when you ask someone to elevate their mandible through the air, for them to recruit 900 fibers is not even recordable on the surface EMG. It's throwing another suitcase on the Queen Mary. Pfft, you can't even feel it. We assume now that the higher EMGs is what the stronger muscle contraction is. So we are only reading electricity underneath that electrode. But the more electricity that is being recorded is indicating how many fibers under the electrode are actually in contraction. And so we just know if the more fibers that are contracting, the stronger this pull, the force being generated is. Okay, here goes. So this purposeful, functional, masticatory activity, chewing food, is a function of the resistance that's in there. When Barry asks someone to raise their jaw tomorrow against no resistance, you won't get any muscle readings. Once you have the resistance, now things are going to start to happen. So we're going to see voltage, which is the electricity being through the muscle. It's not really the pounds of force. Someone say, you butt with like, how much force was that EMG? It wasn't force in the EMG, but we make that assumption, and you can make that assumption. So you've got a few fibers contracting, you'll get minimal elevation. If you innervate more fibers, you recruit more neurons to get more fibers to contract. The more fibers that are contracting, the higher the EMG reading is. How do you recruit more motor fibers? If you elevate through the air, you cannot recruit more than hardly any. If you're elevating through the air, and that's the key right now. The mandible's still moving. You know the elevators are contracting, but you cannot recruit more fibers. Now, you can ask the patient to close as fast as they can, but that's sort of cheating. We're going to talk about masticatory function. Someone wants to, now this is not, I've been adding these recently, so these next few aren't in your handout. I want someone to incise on this marshmallow. Well, here's rotation. If you just purely rotate it upon opening, you don't get to this marshmallow very well. So that lateral pterygoid is going to contract. You need to get a little bit of advancement while you rotate open. So now you've engaged this resistance. And if you ask someone to bite through this marshmallow, it's no coincidence that they bite with a certain degree of velocity. The resistance is dictating that. And so when you ask them to contract, they'll bite through that marshmallow, and this temporalis is tempered. It's only going to recruit so many fibers given the degree of resistance here.